Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Super Danny 2. During the last part, I defeated the 4 Mega Man killers. So in this part, I'll be defeating Base and completing the first half of the Wily Castle. In comparison with the Mega Man killers, Base is rather easy. Even though his jump height is random, just look at the amount of damage he's dealing to me versus how much damage I'm dealing to him. Here's Dr. Wily with his famous eyebrow wiggling. In comparison with several of the Mega Man killers, especially Anchor and Blade, the boss battle against Base is rather pitiful. He really needs some damage buffs, I'd say. It just feels like a difficulty drop. Anyways, on to Wily Fortress we go. The musical track playing in the background is an 8-bit remix of Wily Stage 1 from Mega Man 7, one of my overall favorite Wily Stage themes in the entire series. And from this point onward, you are forced to use fusions. During the Mega Man killer phase of the game, you could get by all the stages without using any of the fusions, but here you're forced to. That's strange, it seems that the Ramacans are immune to the Shadow Blade. I didn't realize that certain enemies are immune to certain special weapons. Also, from this point onwards, I'll try using all of the fusions. I know throughout this Let's Play, I've neglected to use the Snake Fusion, Crystal Fusion, and Flame Fusion over stuff like the Shadow Fusion, Pharaoh Fusion, Skull Fusion, and Gyro Fusion. An extra life. Although off screen, I decided to collect up to 9 lives and 9 dew tanks, as I believe I will need them later down the line. Oops, I didn't mean to use the M-Tank there. Oh well, I can go by without using it. It's not that necessary, with the exception of near the end game, but I can go by without it. It was a misclick, unfortunately. Most players will do this section by using the Gyro Fusion, and I will do it for the second half. If you want to do this Buster only with Super Danny, which is entirely possible, just make sure to keep moving on forwards, as otherwise you'll get knocked off the platforms by these gyres. And these are the rolling wheels from the Proto Fortress stages. Ah, that went by pretty well. I got rather generous drops as well. As these are fortress levels, expect to see most if not all of the enemies and gimmicks we've seen previously in this game. Including some new enemies, I suppose. Remember when I talked about dog robots earlier? First up is Doc Alec. His weakness is the Shadow Blade. Unfortunately, the Elect Beam deals a lot of damage. Thankfully, the powered Shadow Blade deals more damage to him. At least 4 damage per hit. At the end of every Doc Robot rematch, we have a large life pickup. Although for some of them you need to have some Gyro Fusion left over. It also seems that in this game we don't have any regular Metars. We have the Met Daddies, Met Mommies, Helicopter Metals, as well as the Dive Mets. I also wish I had access to the energy balancer in this game. You can make these jumps normally, but I don't want to risk it. A great place to use the Shadow Fusion because you can fire directly upwards. Next up is Doc Crash. His weakness is the Night Crush, Flame Blast, or the regular Charge Shot. He has the same AI as Crashman from Super Danny 1, so it's a little bit modified. Also because the Crash Bomb's explosion duration is a lot shorter in comparison to what it was in Mega Man 2. Let's see, let's restore some Shadow Energy. Onwards to the boss of Wily Castle 1. If you're wondering what Gemini Man and Sparkman are doing here, they're dressed up as the rock band from the Cold Steel episode of the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon. You can only damage them with the Gyro attack, as Gyro Man was originally the third member of the band. In fact, no other boss in this game is immune to all -1 damage types. The strategy here is first destroy the floor to deal with Sparkman, and then drop the lights on Gemini Man. That's also how it worked in the original episode. In short, the first 3 bosses of the Wily Castle levels are taken from the Ruby Spears cartoon.
This show's going to the dogs.
Well, that acted a bit strange. I ended up deflecting more shots against Sparkman than I expected. Usually I'm able to defeat this boss without using any dew tanks. The LPR's curse. Let's hope that it doesn't get worse. As these are Wily Castle stages, you can't save in between, and all of your fusion energies from the previous level carry on forwards. It seems that the seeking AI of the batons is a little bit off. I can either fall to the left or go to the right. I'll go to the left first. And for this section, I want access to the flame fusion, as I need to immediately melt the ice blocks. And try jumping off, but it fails because they immediately start melting. And this engine runs at 30 FPS, not 60 FPS. I knew that was going to happen at least once. Oh well, at least it's only a few screens away. But that does showcase something nice I didn't mention about the flame fusion, of how the flame blast can immediately melt away the ice blocks. And you are forced to use it here. I wish it was showcased earlier in the game, instead of over a bottomless pit. And I could have gone for that extra life, but I don't want to risk it, knowing my luck. Next stop is Dock Ice. Despite his name, is not weak to the flame blast. In fact, it only deals 1 point of damage to him. It can deflect all of his projectiles, or immediately delete all of them. His actual weakness is the Pharaoh Shot. Sadly, the Ice Slashers deal a truckload of damage per hit, even more so than the Elect Beam. And as this engine runs at 30 FPS, it is harder to dodge all the Ice Slashers. The same held true in Super Danny Powered Up. In fact, all the Dock robot encounters are based off of the Roadmasters we faced in Super Danny 1, if I recall correctly. Let's play a bit with Crystal Man, as I feel out of all the fusions in this game, he's the one who's been utilized the least. The main usefulness of the Crystal Eye, or rather the Crystal Fusion, is the bounciness of all these shots. And now the randomly appearing swarms. And random shield attackers that bum rush you. They're tied with Big Eyes of being my least favorite enemies in the game. In this case, it's due to their placement. Not due to how the enemies interact, actually. With Big Eyes, it's because they don't telegraph well when they're going to do their short hops and their tall hops. The problem here is that they're placed in bad locations. One of the locations where the Shadow Blade's downsides are a really big downside. I want to see what's in there. Throw off the head, jump in here. Swap back over to normal. Swap to the Giant Fusion. Fly up here. And now use the special Night Crush. An M-Tag, it was well worth it. A place where the Crystal Eye is actually useful. Better than other special weapons, I mean. It is useful, but in most other occasions, there is almost always a better special weapon to use. See, I wish this Ice Block encounter was moved before that Spike Drop segment, so we aren't introduced to this gimmick over a dead pit. One of the weakest big enemies in this game. Next up is Doc Metal, who actually is weak to the Flame Blast, as he never jumps around to the left as long as you stand on the left side of the room. Let's see if I can do this deathless. Case in point, see how much damage he's taking. Not only that, but the Flame Blast will eat up all of his shots. That's one of the things I forgot to mention when I was talking about the Flame Fusion. The special Flame Blast will delete almost all projectiles it comes into contact with, which would have been handy in Enger's level. I need more life energy. I think I'm gonna die during the next encounter at least once. But while I fight it for the first time, I'll explain how it works. This is Uncle Jet and his flying car. He originates from the Future Shock episode of the aforementioned cartoon. He was an ally of Mega Man back in that episode, but here, he's a crazed sugar addict working for Dr. Wily to obtain more sugar. Those two health bars correspond to his health and the car's health respectively. As long as one of them gets depleted, you win the battle. His weaknesses are the powered Shadow Blade and the powered Night Crush. When I say powered, I'm referring to the versions that deplete weapon energy upon use. And you can't jump over him either. It seems that his own hitbox is rather generous compared to the vehicle.
Anything for my sugar.
Pound it!
I believe you end up getting a different defeat animation if you end up defeating him instead of his vehicle. Honestly, I'd say that out of the 3 Ruby Spears bosses, this one is the hardest one. The easiest one is upcoming. Well, it depends on whether you use his special weapon weakness or not. And this stage has its own difficulties. Why, thank you, game. I needed those extra lives. The RNG is being rather generous. In general, I'd say that the RNG of this game is more on the generous side. Of course, he's immune against the Surge Snake. This section has these pop-up attackers again. And of course I died because I was too close to the edge. I thought I was gonna die by hitting my head against the ceiling, but nope, just that. There are other minor issues with how this game's controls work. You may have noticed sometimes when I'm fighting a boss, I end up firing the charge shot in the opposite direction of the boss. That's due to some peculiarities with how the controls work in this game. Let's try it again. If I fail at it again, I'll just use the Gyro Fusion. The hardest part is waiting for you to exit your vulnerability frames, so you can start charging up the charge shot again. For this section and the next section, I'll be using Skullman. Sumatrans. They're special in the sense that they take up to 6 to 7 regular Buster Shots to destroy, but they fall to 1 fully charged Buster Shot. Another extra life, thank you. Let me farm up a bit before I move on forwards. I want full Pharaoh. Flame needs to be refilled as well. One more should do the trick. Good enough to me. Out of all the dog robot encounters we have in this game, the first stages, 2 of them are the hardest ones. Next up is Dogfire, whose weakness is the Crystal Eye. For all these dog robot encounters, I'll be using their weaknesses. That went rather smoothly, a lot better compared to my test runs. And a Night Crush maze is super damaging to enemies when it actually hits. I'm also thankful that this fortress is filled to the brim with extra lives and dew tanks and an extra M tank if you have the energy for 3 fusions. If I recall correctly, this box has an extra life. It does. Too bad I don't get refilled to full once I collect another life when I'm at max lives. Into the catacombs we go. Ah, there seems to be a secret to the left. Sure, let's take a look. Wait for these enemies to explode, and back up to full. Not worth it. Oh well, I came out with full weapon energy for the Fair Fusion. I didn't mean to do that. See what I mean by getting chained to death? That's the only downside of the Charge Buster Shot in this game, for how fast it charges up. Next up is Doc Quick, whose weakness is the Sword Snake, especially the charged version, or special version. Get ready to take a lot of damage. At least he's super weak against the charged Sword Snake, otherwise I would have died here. Sure, let's go for it. I have more extra lives than I have dew tanks. These are the linemen, the final Ruby Spears boss battle we face in the Wily Castle. They hail from the rather infamous Curse of the Linemen episode of the animated series. In this battle, the linemen's leader, Tar, summons various lionized humans to battle us, while firing lasers at Danny at regular intervals. These can actually temporarily turn Danny into a lion creature, but only when he's not in a fusion form. After we dispatch enough lion creatures, Tar will jump down to face us one-on-one. Their primary weakness is the Pharaoh Wave. The Fair Shot and regular Sword Snake also deal a decent amount of damage to them. They do, however, have a better joke weakness, which I will show off either here or after I complete this part. I'd rather take the dad than waste a dude tank. And notice that we're not actually killing them, we're just knocking them off screen. Yep, he's super weak to the Mimira head. The reason being is that back in the original episode, they used to be mummies. That's the only boss in this game who's super weak against the Mimira head. Certain enemies also take more damage from the Mimira head. The first half of the Wily Castle took over 30 minutes to complete. I didn't expect it to take that long. So this is a good time to end off this episode. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Toodles!